Hello, I'm the author of a new book called God Particle Physics for Dummies, and the place you can find it best is at bestaudiblebooks.com. All the information you're going to see in this video is taken from my book, and you can get an Audible book or a print book or an ebook at bestaudiblebooks.com. Now what we're going to be talking about is how you have arrived where you have arrived at in your life. No matter where your life is at the present, it has evolved from 14 billion years of evolution since the start of the Big Bang. The little symbol on the left is my idea of the Big Bang. And doing the research on my book, I found out that the God particle was created in the first trillionth of a trillionth of the first second of the Big Bang. Now this is very significant, as you'll see, and if you read my book you'll find out even more reasons why. This is the most important event that occurred in evolution's history. Is during the first trillionth of a second, and that whole God particle wave was created in that space of time, which is almost infinite. It is infinitesimally small. You can't even imagine how small it is, and yet all the information that your life required to exist today was created in that space of time, and it's spread all over the universe. And there's the God particle being created in the first trillionth of a second of the Big Bang, almost 14 billion years ago. And after the God particles were created, they created all of the baryonic particles. And by that we mean the subatomic particles of the quarks and the protons and the neutrons, and they're called baryons. They're things that go into making up a proton or an electron. And you know from that high school physics that you might remember that all those particles go into making the atoms. So after about 10,000 years, if you look at the timeline down below, after first thousands of years the baryonic particles were created by the God particle field, and then those created the atoms in about 10,000 years after the Big Bang. And then the atoms created all of the elements. Remember back to your high school physics, all of the elements are created by atoms. And there's so many atoms create different elements. Carbon is a bunch of atoms, I think about 36 different protons in there. I don't want to get into physics that much because it's all about evolution. And hydrogen is one proton. And that's what the mass is all about. Well, the God particle is what gives everything its mass. And from the elements is created matter in the universe. At about 1 million years after the Big Bang, matter is formed all over the universe. It's expanding out faster than the speed of light, by the way, at this point in time. And then all the matter that was created by the elements, created by the atoms, created by the baryons, created by the God particle field, started to create the stars with the force of gravity coming into play. And all the matter sticking together in stars. And then the stars, because of gravity, cluster together. And then by about 500 million years after the Big Bang, galaxies are formed. And then about 1 billion years after the Big Bang, the universe has cooled enough so that planets can form. All the matter that didn't create stars and galaxies starts to stick together with gravitational forces and creates planets. Now that's how the Earth was formed. About 4.5 billion years our planet was formed, the one you're living on. And that's how life started. Life started on the Earth. We don't know if it's anywhere else in the universe, but we do know that life was begun on Earth. And after about 1 billion years of the Earth cooling down, life could start. And the first, with a bolt of lightning probably, no one knows for sure, but some of the most organic chemicals that the Earth had created through water and rain and carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen being created on the Earth. The first little protists, the progenitor life forms were formed. Single cell animals, bacteria mainly, and viruses started to take shape. And then they evolved over the next 3 billion years. Finally, they would evolve into fish, the life in the sea. All of the fishes and the sponges were actually one of the first forms of life, and corals and things like that. And then fishes came about, and then plants came about 475 million years ago. And then insects evolved out of this early life form that's forming on Earth about 400 million years ago. And then reptiles were created about 300 million years ago. We know that all of this from the fossil evidence. It didn't happen the way they say in the Bible in 6 days and 7 nights, whatever. And the Bible people are wrong. The Earth is not 6,000 years old. It's 4.5 billion years old. And we see this from the fossil evidence. So then reptiles about 300 million years ago, then mammals about 200 million years ago, and then hominids, the predecessors of what we are, evolved from the mammals about 12 million years ago. Everything takes place slowly through generations after generations of tiny, tiny mutations in the DNA. And then finally humans about 200,000 years ago descended from the hominids, which became the apes and the predecessors of the apes. And then our ape ancestors started walking upright in the jungle, and came down from the trees and walked around in the savannah. And that's how hominids were created. And that's how we evolved. First there was Homo habilis about 2.5 million years ago, the first creature that actually walked upright halfway. And then Homo erectus about 1.8 million years ago, very slowly starting to stand upright. Now at this point we are standing on our own two legs and never really crawling anymore. And then the Neanderthals were created about 600,000 years ago from small DNA mutations over, as you can see, thousands and even millions of years. And then we came about from the same line of evolution from primates, and we were called Homo sapiens, the smart man. About 200,000 years ago is the first fossil evidence of our true ancestors. And by the way, we killed off the Neanderthals because they existed along with us up until about 40,000 years ago. We killed them off in Europe because we were smarter and we were competing for the same food. So we had to kill them off. Some of their DNA is still in almost every one of us today. But that's how modern man came to be about 200,000 years ago. Yes, 200,000 years ago. And then in Africa, some of our descendants started to migrate out of Africa and became the first Europeans about 100,000 years ago. And then over time we migrate following the herds probably and the vegetation that we could eat. We wound up in the Middle East about 70,000 years ago. Then some of us traveled even further into India about 60,000 years ago. And then some of us landed in China about 50,000 years ago. Some of us walked and then used rafts to get into the South Pacific about 40,000 years ago, and populated all of Malaysia and Australia, New Zealand, and Borneo and Tahiti and all of those islands, thousands and thousands of them all over the South Pacific. And then some of us traveled over the land bridge, and some of us took rafts even further east and landed in the Americas. And that's where you descend from. And you are here now watching this on YouTube or wherever you're watching it, and your decision choices came from your parents. Your evolution obviously came from your parents. A man and a woman got together and their DNA was shared, and that created you. And so a lot of decisions were made prior to your creation, and ever since your creation your parents are making decisions for you when you're a baby, and then they put you into a school or a preschool. So decisions are being made for you, and you're starting to make your own decisions in school. And then you start making decisions about who you're going to really pay attention to, your mentors in life, as you go through your school age. And then when you graduate from school, you start picking your jobs, the way you're going to survive and feed yourself and house yourself. So you're making decisions for yourself. These are evolutionary changes that you can see in your own life, decisions that you make, and some of them made upon you by family and friends who are helping you make decisions and requiring certain decisions from you. And other decisions are made by the books that you read and the movies that you see and other influences in society like that. And then that brings you up to this stage, the future. The point at which you will change your life from this point forward is called the future. And there will be further decisions made by you and for you through society. But now before we get into that, let's rehash what we've just learned, and I'm going to run the clock backwards now. Let's run the movie backwards of your life. How did you get here? Well, remember, you came from books and movies and made decisions of yours. Family and friends helping you make decisions. The jobs that you chose made decisions during your school life. You picked certain mentors, certain teachers that you really believed to be the most truthful for you, and they helped you make decisions about your life. And your personality is formed in school and then by your parents even before that. That's what created you. And what created you also was the immigration of people into the Americas about 20,000 years ago, or maybe you descended from people in the South Pacific that came there about 40,000 years ago and made decisions about your life right there. Maybe you're Asian, so people came. You're created from people in China or India, or maybe you're related to people in the Mideast, or maybe you came from Europeans. But that's how modern man got here. And remember, modern man came from the first very primitive humans that lived in Africa and chased animals every day and tried to survive every day. And they came not from Neanderthals. They were co-equal to us. They were created a little earlier than us, and we coexisted with them, but we both came from Homo erectus, and Homo erectus from Homo habilis, and Homo habilis from the earliest ape creatures that started walking upright. So that's how humans got here. And how did we get here? From hominids evolved from mammals, and mammals evolved from reptiles about 300 million years ago, and insects before that 400 million years ago, and plant life was here about 475 million years ago. Now, we didn't evolve from plants, but this is the coevolution going on the planet. We did evolve from the earliest life that was fishes that swam in the sea. And they came from protists, which were bacteria, and one-celled animals, and then they became multi-celled animals about hundreds and hundreds of millions of years later. It's a very slow process, this evolution that we're talking about, but that's how life on Earth got its start. And then how did Earth get its start? Earth got its start as a planetary system, and our solar system evolved out of the dust in our galaxy, and the galaxies came from the star clusters. The star clusters came from the stars. The stars evolved out of the matter evolved out of the elements evolved out of atoms, the atoms evolved out of the baryons, the subatomic particles, and all of those things came from the God particle. The God particle gives the mass, gives the matter to everything that matters comes from the God particle. We just discovered this a year ago from the Large Hadron Collider. It's now scientific fact that everything was created from the God particle, and the God particle again was created in the first trillionth of a second of the Big Bang. And the Big Bang was about 14 billion years ago. And so everything that you are, everything that you will become, everywhere that you are going after you die is defined by the God particle in the first trillionth of the first second of the Big Bang. That's the tree of life. That's how you got here. And the good news is the God particle is still out there influencing your life every day and helping the decision trees that you see in your life. Everything is from probability, and you can turn the probability into possibilities once you learn more about the God particle and the God particle field. Get it at the God particle book, God's bestaudiblebooks.com. That's bestaudiblebooks.com. You can listen to the whole story of God particle physics for dummies. It's now available in an Audible book on iTunes and other places online. So go there now. You can also get a print book if you prefer that way, or an ebook that you can read on your Nook or your Kindle or your Android device, whatever you get your information from today. Which all of the technology everything that you are, everything you have been, everything you will become, once again, has evolved out of the God particle field that created everything else in its time. And now it's time that we learned more about it. bestaudiblebooks.com. Hope to see you there. Enjoy it. Live long and prosper.